the idea of the ideal city. You know, where did it start in post-classical civilization? And what are the ideas behind it? What are the driving forces behind it? And how is it expressed? And I think for me, I think it really begins in the middle years of the 15th century. We can see a number of artists associated with the great first wave of Florentine Renaissance painters, sculptors and architects, people in the circle of Brunelleschi, Alberti, Ghiberti, and between them what they're working with is this sort of fantastic excitement that they feel at the development of something called mathematically calculated perspective, which causes a complete revolution in painting, which we can see throughout. You go to the National Gallery 15th century rooms and you'll suddenly see painters so enthralled by perspective that people like Paolo Uccello even sort of arrange entire battle scenes in such a way that everything is in perspective. People even die towards the vanishing point. So there's a sort of thrill of mathematics and geometry.
Tall buildings are not the answer to anything other than the minds or the dreams of some architects. Tall buildings don't increase density, they're further apart, unless of course you can put them as close together as they do in Hong Kong, where you can shake hands between balconies. They alienate classes of people, the ones that are at the top of the tower and the ones that are condemned to wandering around the spaces in between. It's Fritz Lang's Metropolis all over again. But there are very rare occasions where there is no alternative, where it's the last solution. That was the case in the city around the time of the millennium, where the city, following the deregulation of financial services in the mid-80s, had run out of space. We'd done everything we could to build ground scrapers up to 10 stories tall with good new spaces, and the city was full.
People really are proud of the city of Copenhagen, not just of their local neighborhood. They're really proud of the city as a whole, and the thought of being close to the water and having access to high-quality public spaces and parks scores very, very high on everybody's mind. And looking at what people say, that really is something that defines their quality of life a lot. And in my work, it takes me around the world, and we work, for example, with Kate Brown and Grosvenor and the colleagues at Grosvenor in London, but we also work in Copenhagen and Vienna. And one key difference I found is that it matters a great deal where the money comes from, and it matters a great deal if you disassociate the idea of home and the idea of property.
Because what we try to do is look at a city, so we looked at 50 global cities and ranked them on their resilience, both in terms of vulnerability and adaptive capacity. But I guess our thinking is if we can research deeply and really understand the city challenges, then you can start to respond to them, albeit that it may only be at a site-specific level. I guess the benefit we have on the London estate, and to a degree at Bermondsey, where it's a 12-acre site, is that we do have this contiguous ownership, which obviously then enables you to do other things. You have access to those spaces between the buildings.
One of the paradoxes of growing cities are you think they would become livelier places just by the fact that they're growing and more people come to the same area, but that's not necessarily the case. The way that development works is that we might be building a lot of dwellings and square meters, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll have lots of people occupying those square meters. So what we realized in Vienna was that this 22nd district of Vienna wants to accommodate 60,000 more people in the future. And the development that I'm involved in is accommodating 40,000 more people living and working. And we then had a tactic. Okay, we do want a lively city. We want to provide people with a great urban experience. So right in the start of this project was decided that driving this city development as a constitutional factor would be public spaces of great quality.
Cambridge is facing, well, we're delivering 20% growth in a historic city. It's a huge challenge for us. And we've set out 4 principles, a quality charter, which helps to guide that. And that's around character, climate, connectivity and community. And those are the 4 principles. And I think they apply everywhere. And they apply across and into the future too.
In Southampton, it's been very much kind of an industrial area. City centre living hasn't been that popular, but given the pressure on housing, we're going to have to get people living in the city centre. So how do we make it an attractive environment? And retail alone isn't going to do that. It's great to cater for visitors and tourists to Southampton. That's very important. They bring an important contribution to our economy. But how do we make it attractive for people to live? And perhaps traditionally that's been about flatted developments that maybe a certain age group come into, and then when you get to a certain stage in your life, you want to have family, then you start to move out. And that's not necessarily presenting a very balanced economy or neighbourhood. So how do we develop a different type of city centre living that's attractive for your whole life span? So perhaps you come to university in the city, or perhaps you live in the city, you grow up. My children are in the city, perhaps I go to university, hopefully not in Southampton, but they might leave home for a few years, but they'll come back, they see it as their home, they see it as an important place in their life, and then there are different places within the city for them to grow, have their family, develop their career.
That we are all growing. London is going to grow from 8.4 to 10, 11 millions in a generation. Copenhagen is growing much slower, but Vienna is growing. We're all growing, but at the end of the day, in 9 out of 10 cases, if you look in London, I feel, for example, I look at new development areas and I think, wow, this to me looks like building an enormous car park for parking money. It doesn't look like the environment that I want to create if I want to satisfy those two needs of the metropolitan and the local/hygge environment.
I'm positive and optimistic about London. London has survived plague and fire and bombing and financial catastrophes, and every time it's bounced back more strongly. The great thing about London is it's unplannable. And I say that to somebody that spent a lifetime trying to plan it. I think London's too strong to be planned. It is a true world city. It's not an English city. It is the possession of the world. That's great. It's going through a rough patch at the moment, probably because people, the central government particularly, are trying to plan it. There's no problem that needs a political solution.
So for me, there are clear examples around Europe that I think show that you need an urban development culture that allows end users to be hands-on involved with their interests in the world that's being built for them. If you develop big chunks of city without end user involvement and there is no cocktail of interests around you, you're going to generate a lot of subprime urban tissue. So that I think is something that I've observed a lot.